Welcome to Top Notch TV, a paragon of excellence. Today with you is Tr.Risper, a teacher from PCEA KIKUYU High School teaching English and literature. And today I also have a guest with me. She's teacher Emis Njabani, a teacher from Alliance High School, an examiner as well as an author, and she also teaches English and literature. We are further continuing with the discussion on the plot analysis, and we are going into the winding up of Act 3. Therefore, Teacher Emis will be taking us through Act 3, Scene 3. Welcome, Teacher Emis.
Thank you, Tr.Risper. Welcome, our learners. We are going to do Act 3, Scene 3. And the setting for this scene is Madigo Golf Club and Jungle Room, and it's on a Monday afternoon. So at the beginning of this scene, we get to see a meeting between Mosi and Mayor Mosi and Inspector Bembe. So Bembe is brought out as being apprehensive because of the things that have been happening and things to do with the Samaritan app. So he's afraid and he's talking about how his health is going down. He has health issues because of the stress that he's under, because of the things that are being posted in the Samaritan. He also informs the mayor about the arrest that he made for Nicole. That was actually at the end of our last scene, in our last episode, Scene 2, where together with his two police officers, he arrested Nicole. So we learned from Bembe that before Monday, before she was arraigned in court, there were so many protesters. Actually, it's thousands of protesters outside the court protesting against the arrest of teacher Nicole. So he says that the judge dismissed the case and released Nicole because of lack of evidence. So according to Bembe, he had arrested Nicole and he had also planned. He had planned that he would have some people or looks to go and steal the school generator and pin it on teacher Nicole. But the people that he had entrusted with the task to go and steal the generator were not able to do so. So when Nicole was charged with the stealing of the school generator, it lacked evidence because the generator was not stolen. So the judge had no option but to dismiss the case. And so teacher Nicole was released. So now Bembe is afraid because his bosses are now curious. They want to know what is happening in Maracas municipality. There is these issues or these ills that are coming up in the application. And now on this other side, their police force or the inspector general is arresting the teacher concerning the application. And when the case is tabled in court, there is no evidence because actually it was just a lie. Can you imagine someone being prosecuted or being arraigned in court for stealing something that was not stolen? So it portrays a very bad picture on the general inspector of police, Bembe, and that is now why Bembe is afraid. So Mosi also compliments Bembe because earlier on in our earlier episodes, we had seen them organizing how they are going to have criminal gangs to go and stop the vote of no confidence on Mosi. So they had organized Red Eagle. The other one was the Ghetto Boys together with some police officers to go and cause chaos and stop Ramdaye and his team from accessing the municipal headquarters where they had planned to meet and pass a vote of no confidence on Mosi. So Mosi is happy and he compliments Bembe for making it impossible for Ramdaye and his team to actually access the headquarters. So Bembe says that they were able to stop the vote of no confidence, but he has heard that Ramdaye and his team are regrouping. That did not completely deter them from meeting and coming up with other ways to defeat Mosi and his team. So he says that rumor has it that they are regrouping and they have a rally that is scheduled to take place on Wednesday. So you remember there was a meeting with Ramdaye and Basdeo and Honorable Ted and Seymour, where they agree that they are going to hold a rally so that they can expose the ills that Mayor Mosi and his team have been involved in before Mosi gets them arrested. So there is some sort of competition to try and outdo the other team before they bring their downfall. So Moses says that they should also prevent that from happening. Since they use the criminal gangs to prevent the vote of no confidence from happening, they can still use the same gangs to prevent the rally from happening. He also says that they can use Justice Jaden to prosecute and imprison Ramdaye and his team to have a permanent solution to their meeting to pass a vote of no confidence on Mosi. So they agree that they are going to do that, but Mosi says that he had actually invited Justice Jaden to this meeting. So at this juncture, that's when now Justice Jaden comes in. He comes in and is shocked to see Inspector Bembe because Mosi had actually not mentioned that it's going to be a meeting involving 3 people. He had stated it that it's going to be a meeting between just the 2 of them. So Mosi tells him it's good that Bembe is there because the matter he wants them to discuss involves all the 3 of them. So they start by telling him that they would want him to actually prosecute Ramdaye and his team or company. But Jaden says that he's not going to do that. He's not going to get his name dirty because as far as he knows, he has not been mentioned in the Samaritan. So there is no way he's going to help them cover their skeletons and then in the process expose himself or actually his reputation. But of course, they had a plan up their sleeve. So when he says that he's not going to engage in their plans, he is not going to be part of their plans, now Mosi resorts to blackmail and threats. So when Jaden tries to leave, Mosi tells him there is actually a story that has come up in the Samaritan that mentions you. And now that gets Jaden's attention. So Mosi talks about the grains and rodents scandal. So he says, he tells Inspector Bembe to take a statement so that the police can act on that statement and arrest Jaden. So he talks about last year. Last year, one of the Justice Jaden's mistresses called Ivy goes and approaches the mayor and she wants to be given a contract to eliminate the rodents from the municipality. So mayor tells her there is now such a case. We don't have a situation where the rodents are actually eating the grains in the municipality. We don't have such a problem. And then a few months later, now real rodents are in the municipality. They're eating the rice grains, they're eating all the grains in the stores, in the farms, and so on. So it now becomes a real problem. And Ivy goes back. She goes back now to the mayor to actually ask for the contract again. So, and now she has a company that is called Vertebrator Pest Control Company that is said to be a subsidiary of the Prime Orchard Limited. So she goes back and she wants to be given the contract. When the mayor refuses now, she takes Jaden actually advises her to take the case to court. She says that she had already made plans, acquired some supplies, and so the company cannot wait. And again, it was an emergency. They can't go through the process of bidding because by the time they do through the process of bidding, the rodents will have consumed all the grains in the municipality. Again, she had incurred some expenses in getting some supplies. So Judge Jaden lose in favor of Ivy. So they don't follow the protocol. They don't get the to the bidding process where they choose the best company to be given the tender. So the contract is given directly to the Vertebrate Pest Control Company under Ivy. So she goes and now starts to eliminate the pests. So what do? They to show them their rodents and then they bury them. But now the truth is, according to Mosi, this Vertebrate Pest Control Company was rearing rodents. So they were rearing rodents and then releasing them into the farms. To show the public that indeed there was a problem with the
rodents.
rodents, with the municipality that needed to be eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
So they would rear the rodents, release them into the farm, go kill a few, parade them for the public to see, and then bury them. So when Ruma had it, that actually that is what they were doing, and the case was taken to court, still the case fell under Judge Jaden. So what does he say? He says that actually he compares it to the biblical story about the locusts. It is a natural phenomenon. So there is no way Ivy and the team can control this. It is something that is natural. It is now when Basdeo and Ramdaya also came to hear about it. But what does Ivy do? Ivy bribes them and also gives them shares in the company to keep their mouths shut. So Justice Jaden does nothing about it. They are even also talking about the rodents, saying that they have an attitude. And how do they have an attitude? According to Mosi, they are domesticated rodents. So they are used to human beings. That even if you come across them in the stores, they don't even pave way for you, because according to them, human beings are their friends. They are so big, they are so domesticated. That's why he says that Jaden referred to them as having an attitude, because they are not afraid of human beings. So they also came up with cats. They're referring to them as some fluffy something. They are so airy creatures that actually also have an attitude. And according to them, the cats prefer to eat chicken rather than they eat what? The rodents. So they are not actually helpful to the situation. So he also says that as we speak right now, or as they were speaking, the rodents are more than the grains that they have in the municipality. Now, you might be wondering, what was Ivy and his company up to? So we have been told that Vertebrate Pest Control Company that was given the contract or awarded the contract to eliminate the rodents was a subsidiary of Prime Orchard Limited. Now, Prime Orchard Limited was one of the biggest companies, import companies in the municipality, or grain import companies in the municipalities. So they used to import grains from other countries. So they wanted now to kill the domestic production. They wanted to undermine domestic production in the municipality so that they grains into the municipality. So they introduced rodents into the municipality. The rodents, they actually did not intend to do so, because they wanted the rodents to eat the grains that were produced domestically, so that Prime Orchard Limited can get now the job to supply grains in the municipality, which they have imported. So it was like a whole cartel of making money all the way coming from Prime Orchard Limited, and Justice Jaden had shares in the same company. So Mosi knew all this, and so he used that situation to blackmail Justice Jaden. So when it got there, now of course he tries to deny it, but he realizes that Mosi and Bembe have all the details, and there is no way he can run out of the situation. So they he decides to join their team. He has no option anyway. It's either he joins their team and try to save himself, or he digs his own grave by walking out on them. So it says to join them. And now the condition that Mosi gives him is, if you want us to help you, if you want us to keep this from being exposed, all these details from being exposed, if you don't want to be arrested by the inspector here, then it means that you have to do what we want you to do. So prosecute Ramdaya and his team. So Mosi tells him, we want you to prosecute Ramdaya and Basdeo for the grain scandal. So imagine the situation, Ramdaya and Basdeo company, Justice Jaden has shares in, and he was also involved in corruption because he would rule cases in favor of his mistress Ivy. The same grain scandal. So how exactly Was he going to prosecute Ramdae and Basdeo and keep himself out of jail?
Dilemma.
It was a dilemma. So he was told that's what they want him to do. And then he was also supposed to go prosecute Seymour and Ted for supplying air to the Maracas municipality. And that's when now Mosi and Inspector Bembe leave. So when Jaden is left alone, he's crying. He's talking about asas and all that. So he had actually told himself that he would take part in this green scandal and then he would enrich himself, make money, and then he's going to retire and live a happily ever after life. But that does not happen. So he starts now even, it's all in his mind. The fear is so much that it's like he's getting depressed. So at the end of the scene, we see him talking about how he can see rodents. He can smell rodents. He can see rodents that are running after him, and he starts running about on the stage and before he runs out of stage. So we can see that this whole thing affects him mentally and it's like depressing to him, but he's left with no choice but to join forces with Mosi and his team because they have something against him that they're using to blackmail him. So that marks the end of Act 3, actually Scene 3. And so I give you the baton back to take us through the next scene.
Thank you, my colleague. My colleague has actually presented the situation of the corruption very well, naming the companies, and now we know what is ailing Justice Jaden. As I take over the cue, I'll be talking about my colleague has finished Act 3, Scene 3, taking us into Act 4, Scene 1. Act 4, Scene 1 is taking place in one of the rooms in the Mandigo Golf Club. Mandigo Golf Club that is being owned by Inspector Bembe. As we are coming into that scene, we are seeing that Justice Jaden has already arrived and he is pacing up and down. He is looking like he is apprehensive about something. Something seems to worry this guy. And by the time we were ending Act 3, we saw that he had been pushed against the wall. He has been presented with a dilemma that he needs to prosecute his own allies that he was involved in corruption with. And we are now later learning that he is waiting for Mr. Harvester. For the ones who have forgotten Mr. Harvester is the CEO to the municipality. And when Mr. Harvester arrives, he goes ahead and welcomes him. After welcoming him, he goes straight to the point. And the point is that he is soliciting the help of Mr. Harvester to prevent an eventuality, an undesirable situation. And he goes ahead and says, I've called you Mr. Harvester because I know that you are a man of God. And now this man of God, let's also try and understand Mr. Harvester, this man of God. And Mr. Harvester goes ahead and says he is in no better position because he also is being accused of a number of discrepancies that are leveled against him. He's also been involved in a number of things that he wouldn't want to come to light. But then he continues, and in his defense, what does he say? He says, I am a Christian, and as a good Christian, I'm always supposed to obey commands from my seniors. In his defense, he is saying, I'm simply carrying out instructions as given by my masters. And he further says that because he's a Christian, the family, even his family, his children and the wife, they are all involved in fasting and prayer to see that the situation gets better. He goes further ahead, and on page 115, he says that my wife, children, and I is fasting and praying. We trust God to get us out of this mess. I haven't known my God to fail the innocent. That is one example of religious hypocrisy. How is he innocent, yet he has been propagating evils? He has always been used to propagate the corruption that the municipality is being charged with. Justice Jaden continues and he makes us understand his side of the story. You remember that they are fighting. Now there are two sides that are waging war against each other. There are those that are against Mosi and others are pro-Mosi. Now this guy, he has been compromised in both of the groups. Over here he is He has been given instructions, as my colleague had earlier said. The instructions are that they want to prosecute the quartet. The quartet, the four people. The four people, including Ramdaye being one of them, Basdeo, the opposition leader, being another one, and then the secretaries, Ted, as well as Seymour. Those ones have gone and formed an alliance against Morsi. And why is Morsi pushing so hard? Morsi is pushing so hard so that they won't get to pass the vote of no confidence against him. He doesn't want to vacate that office. Therefore, when they bring the war to him, he will also push it back to them. And they're looking forward, Morsi is looking forward to the support of the law. He wants the law to be on his side. Therefore, what threat does he put in place? He says that his lawyers, or let's rather say, the lawyers of the municipality, they intend to bring a case to court, a case against a company, and the company is being sued. And which company are we talking about? You're talking about the same company that had been instrumental in what we are calling the rodent scandal. They wanted to make sure that the maize that is locally grown to look like it is not of the best quality, so that they get their own grains and make money out of their municipality. And then Justice Jaden is in a dilemma. The dilemma is as follows: he's between a rock and a hard place. That how can I be in the long run, we're realizing he is in too deep. He is in bed with the quartet, the same one that wants to be prosecuted. At the same time, we're learning that there's another thing that is bothering Justice Jaden. This guy, his conscience is not clear. Yeah. He is fighting against his conscience when he's talking about he's seeing rodents everywhere. He had been involved in some wrong. He's seeing the rodents everywhere, even some big ones that are sewer rats. He is seeing them everywhere. It is an indication that his conscience is not clean. And he says that also because of this issue, it is causing him ulcers. And in his admission, he says he has always had the ulcers, but then there's a time he has eaten at that establishment, the same Madingo establishment owned by Inspector Bembe. And you know that already they are not on the same side. And he feels that Inspector Bembe must have had something to do with his increased ulcers. He must have spat in my food. That is what he concludes. And then after he has narrated his side of the story, we see that Harvester gives him a piece of advice. He says, because you are somehow involved in this case, you won't be able to provide the necessary justice. What do you do then? You just disqualify yourself. Yeah. You give the reasons as to why I have vested interest, therefore I cannot preside over this case. That is the avenue that Mr. Harvester is giving him to get out of this situation. And then we see that at the end of it, Justice Jaden seems to have found a way out. What does he say? He says, he as the person who has been given that mandate to come up with the decision between the two warring facts, he will pick a decision that favors the majority. And the decision that favors the majority, according to him, is these two facts, these two sides should be brought on the table, and he calls for a ceasefire. When you see that, you're fighting someone, and when you're fighting that person, you're losing. At the same time, the other side is losing. Now that we are both losing, why don't you do this? Why don't you come to the table, both of us, and reach a consensus? Let's stop fighting. We are fighting again. We are fighting amongst ourselves, yet our enemy is the Samaritan. Harvester now is tasked with bringing on the table the warring facts for the purpose of dialogue, and he promises to do exactly that. He's now the person, they'll trust you because you're a man of God. Go ahead, schedule a meeting between Moses' side as well as this other side that you can call the Ramdaye's side. And they already even schedule a time for the meeting, and it is put at the following day at Justice Jaden's chambers. And that brings to a close the end of Act 4, Scene 1. And also, it brings to an end our today's episode, and we hope that the more we are discussing the plot analysis that you get to further understand the play. That is it for today, but join us in a later episode as we continue. From us now, it is a goodbye. Bye.